"What do you mean he's asking for leftovers? This isn't a soup kitchen." The voice rang out with sharp contempt, slicing through the quiet hum of the buffet line. Wesley Morgan froze mid-step. He hadn't even made it past the sneeze guard yet. In his worn Green Bay Packers hoodie, a face clean-shaven and head low, he blended in like just another tired customer coming in for dinner. The man behind the counter, draped in a white apron and a hat that sat too large on his head, hadn't noticed him. Wesley had booked this meal anonymously under the name Frank through a third-party app his company used for customer feedback. It was a strategy he'd used countless times, visiting stores at random to gauge the real experience from a customer's perspective. 13 buffet locations spread across several states, and this one, nestled in a quiet corner of East Columbus, had always hovered around mediocrity. No disasters, no accolades, just lukewarm numbers. He figured it was time to see it for himself. 8 years ago, he'd bought the chain from a couple ready for retirement. Back then, the food had potential, but service was wildly inconsistent. He'd worked relentlessly to clean it up, streamlining recipes, raising wages, building a strong management infrastructure. And it had worked. For a while, but recently the numbers had started slipping, not in a way that spelled doom, but enough to send a quiet ripple of concern down his spine. He didn't recognize any of the employees here. Most had joined after the chaos of COVID, and he hadn't stepped foot in this location since before then. So here he was, just a man with a plastic tray in hand, trying to catch a glimpse of the truth. A frail man stood by the register. His coat was threadbare, his cheeks hollowed out by time and hunger, maybe in his early 50s, but weathered by life enough to seem older. He wasn't begging, he wasn't loud, just standing, waiting, hoping. "Sir, you can't just loiter here and ask for scraps," the young man behind the counter snapped, louder this time, his voice laced with irritation. "You want food? You pay like everyone else." The older man muttered something inaudible, barely lifting his eyes. Wesley leaned forward, instincts pulling him closer. The shame in the man's posture was unmistakable. Shoulders curled inward, hands tucked close like he was trying to make himself disappear. "I don't care if you're hungry," the employee added, louder now, eyes darting at customers nearby. "Go to a shelter or something. You're making people uncomfortable." Wesley felt his jaw tighten, his stomach clench. A young woman working the salad bar nearby had paused. Her curls were pulled back neatly, her eyes alert beneath a name tag that read Whitney F. She glanced toward the older man, then at her coworker. Without a word, she reached under the counter, pulled out a small plate, and began quietly scooping food onto it. Wesley's breath caught as he watched her walk over. "Here," she said softly, holding the plate out. "Just don't tell anyone I gave you this, okay?" The man blinked, stunned by the small kindness. He took the plate, nodded once. "Thank you," he whispered. The tall employee, face flushed with indignation, slammed his serving spoon on the counter. "You serious, Whitney? So we're feeding every stray now?" She didn't flinch. Her voice was calm but firm. "He's a person, Eric." That simple sentence hung in the air like a quiet declaration of war. Wesley finally stepped forward and handed his ticket to the cashier. "One for the dinner buffet," he said, his voice steady. 17 even, she replied without glancing up. He paid in cash, took his plate, and moved slowly down the line, observing. Eric was muttering curses under his breath, clattering trays loud enough to draw stares. Wesley found a table in the back, his seat angled so he could see the entire line. The older man with the donated plate sat alone in the far corner, eating slowly, his head bowed low. Whitney had returned to her station, glancing his way now and then. Eric stood near the counter, arms crossed, eyes glued to his phone. Wesley didn't touch his food, not a single bite. 15 minutes passed. Then he stood, walked to the drink machine and pretended to fill a cup. He leaned slightly toward Whitney. "Hey," he said in a low voice. "That guy you helped, does that happen a lot?" She hesitated, then nodded slightly. "Sometimes. He's come by before. Doesn't ask for much." "And management, they know?" Her lips pressed into a tight smile. "They don't care, not unless someone complains. You ever get in trouble?" "Eric told the manager once, I got a verbal warning, whatever that means." Her tone carried a weight of quiet defiance. "You always help people like that?" Wesley asked, his voice soft. She glanced at her shoes, then back at him. "If I can." He paused for a beat, then said, "Thanks. That was decent of you." Her eyes flickered in surprise. "Thanks." Wesley stepped outside. The sidewalk was empty and the sky above had dimmed to a gray dusk. He took in the flickering neon sign overhead, the cracked tile by the entrance, the peeling paint along the window frame. Nothing catastrophic. But the signs were there. Signs of something slowly unraveling. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "Hey, this is Wes. I need you to schedule a district manager meeting tomorrow morning, store 13. I saw something tonight we need to talk about." He ended the call and looked back through the window. Eric was still posturing by the counter. Whitney was quietly cleaning her station. And the man with the borrowed dignity of a warm plate sat alone, still eating in peace. Something had shifted tonight. Not just in the numbers, but in Wesley, and what he wanted his company to stand for. The plate was gone. Wesley didn't need to see more. The silence left in the wake of the man's quiet departure said enough. It echoed louder than the clatter of trays or the hiss of steam from the kitchen. Tomorrow, things would change. And this time, they'd know exactly who he was. He arrived before sunrise. The parking lot still wore the shadows of night, just a few weary cars scattered across the fractured asphalt like forgotten memories. The air bit with winter's edge, the kind that made your breath come out in short, steaming puffs and turned every second of waiting into an act of endurance. Wesley parked around the side, out of view, and entered through the employee door using a key fob he hadn't used in years, one he'd kept from his early hands-on days when this business still felt raw and personal. Inside, a few heads turned. No greetings, no recognition, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the quiet inertia of morning routines. A young prep cook was slicing onions with earbuds in, nodding to a rhythm only he could hear. A dishwasher loaded trays without looking up, his body moving from habit rather than intent. Two servers leaned against a counter, scrolling on their phones, their aprons still neatly folded, untouched by the day. Wesley passed them without a word and slipped into the break room, closing the door behind him. Moments later, the manager walked in holding a clipboard and a coffee cup. She didn't look up right away. "Morning," she said absently, then stopped cold as she caught sight of him. Soft. "Oh, Mr. Morgan. Christina," he said, his voice even, deliberate. "We need to talk, now." She stiffened, setting her cup down carefully. "Should I call the district manager?" "No," he said, meeting her eyes. "I already spoke to him. This conversation starts with you." They walked out into the dining area, still half dreaming in yesterday's grime. Chairs were flipped onto tables, the smell of old fried chicken mixed uneasily with bleach and air freshener. Wesley gestured toward a booth near the window, and Christina sat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I was here last night," he said plainly. Her posture straightened. "Last night? As a customer?" He nodded. "You didn't see me. I used a different name. Sat in the back. Watched how your team treats people." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "There's a reason this store is underperforming," he continued. "And it's not the menu. It's the atmosphere. It's what you allow to grow when you're not looking. I run a tight ship, she said quickly, defensively. We follow protocols. Wesley leaned in slightly. Protocols didn't stop one of your employees from humiliating a man last night, a man who wasn't disruptive, who didn't ask for anything but dignity, and instead of decency he got contempt. Christina's face paled, her lips parted, but no words came. The person who helped him treated like she was the problem. I didn't know, she said softly. No, Wesley replied. You didn't. Because you weren't out there. You were in the back like always. And someone like Eric, he's filling that void, setting the tone. Her expression darkened. Eric's not a manager. He doesn't need the title to lead. He already is, because no one else is stepping up to stop him. He's been here 6 years, she said. Covers shifts, trains people, handles rushes. He keeps things running. And that gives him the right to decide who's worthy of compassion? Wesley asked. Christina went still. Her silence said more than any excuse. I want him gone, Wesley said. She blinked. You're terminating him? Immediately? Yeah. She hesitated, then nodded. Understood. Wesley stood. Gather the staff. I want to speak with them before opening. Minutes later, the team assembled in the dining area. Some looked confused, others wary. Whitney stood near the back, arms loosely crossed, her eyes scanning Wesley curiously. Eric walked in last, yawning, his apron still dusted with yesterday's crumbs. Wesley didn't need a podium. He stood in front of them, grounded and calm. My name is Wesley Morgan, he began. I own this company. Some of you may have heard of me. Some probably haven't. That's on me. Murmurs rippled through the group. I started this business with my own hands. Cleaned fryers, closed alone on weekends. I've done it all, and I did it because I believed this could be more than a job. I believed this could matter, that we could feed people and treat them like they belonged. He let the words settle like warm rain. Last night, I saw something that betrayed everything I built this place for. A man came in. He was hungry, quiet, not aggressive, and instead of help, he was mocked. Eric shifted, arms crossed. Calmed if you stepped up, Wesley continued, eyes flicking toward Whitney. The rest watched, or turned away. And one of you, Eric, decided to speak for all of us, without permission. With respect, Eric interrupted, we get people like that all the time. If we hand out food to every one of them, you're done, Wesley said sharply. Eric's mouth dropped open. What? Of learning, you're no longer employed here. Get your things. You're kidding. I cover 5 closings a week. I train the weekend crew. And none of that gives you the right to treat someone like trash. You're not a leader, Eric. You're a risk I can't afford. Eric's jaw clenched. This is insane. Unprocess your exit. Leave your keycard. Eric looked around, expecting someone to defend him. No one did. He dropped his card onto a table and stormed out. Wesley turned back to the team. I'm not here to scare anyone. I'm here to fix what's broken. That starts with accountability. His gaze landed on Whitney. You acted when no one else did. You didn't seek attention. You just helped. That matters. Her brows lifted in surprise. Starting today, you're a lead server. You'll get a raise, and I want to talk to you about assistant management training. Thank you, she said, her voice small but steady. You earned it. Wesley looked at the others. This place will get better, but only if we stop taking shortcuts. If someone needs help, we help, every time. And for the first time that morning, the room was still. Listening. If someone disrespects a customer or a coworker, they're out. No warnings, no excuses. The words dropped heavy into the silence. No one moved. No one needed to. The gravity in Wesley's tone held them there. "I'll be around all day," he continued. "Watching, listening, stepping in if I have to. If you've got concerns, frustrations, ideas, bring them to me. I'll hear every one of them." Then, without another word, he grabbed a chair, flipped it down with a thud, and sat. "Let's open the doors." And just like that, the day began, but everything felt different. There was no announcement, no posted sign, but the tone had shifted. People stood taller, their movements held more intention, conversations stayed hushed but purposeful, the kind of silent ripple that signaled a tide turning. Whitney was a force. Calm, watchful, steady. Wesley noticed the way she managed the front like someone who had always been meant to lead. She guided the newer servers without embarrassing them, nudged them gently back into place when they wandered off task, checked on the drink stations between table visits, and even showed a new hire the proper salad bar setup, all without making a show of it. It was leadership in its purest form, quiet, competent, and contagious. But something else nagged at Wesley. He hadn't seen Christina once on the floor during the lunch rush. He found her tucked away in the back office, a pen in her mouth, flipping through scheduling sheets. "You're going to need to hire differently," he said, stepping into the doorway. She looked up, startled. "We've had trouble getting applicants." "Then raise your standards. Don't hire for speed. Hire for values. For heart." "I've been just trying to keep shifts filled," she said, rubbing her forehead. "And that's how people like Eric end up running the show without the title," Wesley said. Her face tightened. "Turnover's been brutal since spring. People ghost after 2 days. Others quit mid-week. I'm short almost every week. Then flag it higher. You let it keep sliding, it becomes invisible. You start to normalize dysfunction." "I didn't think it would matter." "It does now. Starting today, you report staffing gaps directly to regional. I'll make sure they act. But you've got to coach the people who do care before they burn out." She nodded, slowly absorbing the shift. "I'll schedule weekly check-ins with you for the next 2 months. If things don't improve, we'll revisit your role. Fair?" "Yes, sir," she said softly. Wesley turned and made his way back to the floor. A family of 5 had just walked in, 3 young kids bouncing excitedly ahead of their parents. Whitney greeted them with warmth, walked them to a clean booth, then crouched to eye level with the smallest child, who clutched a teddy bear like a life raft. Wesley watched her offer a soft smile, say something only the child could hear, and watch the little one giggle and nod. He didn't need a press release. No camera crew, no grand gesture. He just needed this place to feel human again. But that hope cracked, briefly, about 20 minutes later. A young cook, Matteo, stepped away from the grill line with a barely hidden limp. He leaned against the prep counter, trying to make it look casual. Wesley saw right through it. His shirt clung to his back with sweat, and his apron was soaked through. Above the grill, the ticket rail hung heavy with uncalled orders. Wesley walked up and opened the cooler beside him, trying not to draw attention. "You've been on since 8, right?" Matteo nodded. Jason called out. "Again. I think he quit." "Are you okay?" "I tweaked my knee last week. Still sore." "You told anyone?" "Doesn't matter," Matteo said, eyes still down. "If I don't show, Christina's got no one, and I didn't want Whitney stuck back here again." Wesley scanned the growing line of tickets, then quietly but firmly, "Take 10, go sit, I've got this." "You sure?" "Yeah." Matteo hesitated, then nodded and limped away. Wesley slipped on gloves, tied an apron tight, and grabbed the spatula. The motions came back to him like muscle memory. Burgers flipped, tenders fried, tickets cleared, heads turned. A few employees peeked from the service window with wide eyes. Whitney passed by carrying a full tray, raising a brow. "Didn't think I'd see the day," she murmured. Wesley didn't look up. Ever see someone limp through a shift because they're too scared to ask for help? She adjusted the tray in her arms, more often than I'd like. Then we've got bigger problems than turnover. When Mateo returned, Wesley had cleared the board. The kid looked sheepish. You run this place before or something? He asked, managing a grin. Something like that, Wesley replied, handing back the spatula. 15 minutes later, Wesley found Christina by the dry storage closet checking inventory. You've got employees working through injuries, he said flatly. Why wasn't that reported? It's Mateo, she said. He only mentioned it yesterday, said it wasn't a big deal. He's limping. Offered to send him home, he refused. Said he didn't want to mess up the shift. That's not his call to make, it's yours. She glanced down the hallway, shoulders sagging. We're short 3 people this week. I've been trying to keep it all afloat without doubling shifts. You're not a firefighter, Christina. You don't let things burn just because you're short on hoses. She nodded slowly. I've been patching holes non-stop. One person leaves, another barely shows. I'm just trying to keep the doors open. Then ask for help. You won't get it if you keep hiding the cracks. She hesitated. I didn't want it to reflect badly on me. You think I care more about numbers than people falling apart on the line? Christina looked at him long and hard. No. I just didn't want to look like I couldn't handle it. You're not supposed to handle it alone. That's what your district team is for. And if they're not responding, I'll make sure they do. She took a breath, steadier now. I'll request 2 temp cooks. Flag Mateo's injury in the log. Adjust his hours. Good. Also, start grooming internal support. Whitney's solid. Mateo's got potential, but only if you invest in him. Back on the floor, Wesley caught another issue near the dessert bar. A woman in her 40s, clipboard in hand, voice sharp, was berating a young male server. Evan, maybe 19, face flushed bright red. No, not how you refill the trays. I told you 5 times. You're not listening. I was just following the chart, Evan stammered. Then you didn't read it. It says right here, when it's below half, you replace it. You don't top it off. Now go do it again. Wesley stepped in. Everything all right here? The woman turned, surprised. Mr. Morgan, I didn't realize you were still on site. I am. And you are? Danielle Foster, corporate training consultant, here for the quarterly audit. Wesley gave a curt nod. I appreciate your role, but this isn't how we train people. He's a new hire and he's not a punching bag, Wesley cut in. If there's a correction, it's done respectfully. If it's a pattern, it gets documented and coached, not shamed in front of customers. Danielle's face twitched. I wasn't trying to humiliate him. You raised your voice, you jabbed your finger, you made him feel small. That's not correction, it's intimidation. She lowered her eyes. I'll adjust. You'll step off the floor. HR will follow up on your conduct. Danielle opened her mouth, thought better, then laughed in silence. Wesley turned to Evan. You're doing fine. If something's unclear, ask Whitney or Mateo. They've got your back. Evan nodded quickly. Thanks. As Wesley returned to the front, he spotted a little girl, maybe 7, standing by the host stand, clutching a plastic cup. You okay? He asked, crouching beside her. She nodded. I spilled my drink. No big deal. Where's your table? She pointed toward the far corner. Whitney was already on her way, towel in one hand, fresh cup in the other. The girl smiled and ran back to her family. Wesley stood and watched. This wasn't about the food anymore. It was about what the place felt like. And for the first time in a long while, it felt right. The child's father gave a quiet, thankful nod as Whitney handed over the fresh drink. Then, with one hand still resting protectively on his daughter's back, he pulled out his phone and typed a short message to the regional director. Need Whitney's personnel file. Begin assistant manager onboarding next week. Small gestures, quiet moments, but they ripple. By late afternoon, the storm of service had thinned into a manageable current. Wesley stepped back into the office, shutting the door behind him as the hum of conversation softened through the walls. He scanned the staffing chart pinned to the corkboard. Half the names bore question marks or overlapping blocks. A few shifts were doubled back to back. A bandage over a broken structure. No wonder the team was stretched thin. He picked up the office phone and dialed directly. "I need 2 floaters assigned to store 13 starting tomorrow," he said. "One for back of house, one for the dining room." A pause on the other end. "That'll leave another site tyke." "Then tell that site to flag it early," Wesley replied. "I'd rather shuffle ahead than clean up after. Prioritize attitude over speed." "Copy that. I'll coordinate it." He hung up and stepped back into the dining area. The last guests of the dinner wave trickled in, like waves washing gently against a worn shore. Whitney was at the register, exchanging smiles with an older couple. Mateo, steady now, was sanitizing his station, his limp no longer the lead in his step. Evan was at the dessert bar, topping off trays. No clipboard, no flustered consultant watching over his shoulder. Just focus. Wesley sat down near the window and let the atmosphere speak for itself. The clink of plates, the whisper of polite conversation, the hiss of the soda machine. The place wasn't perfect. It wasn't, but it was alive again. And for today, that was enough. The next morning, Wesley stood quietly in the back hallway, arms folded, watching the new float cook wrestle through a batch of cornbread batter. The kid was young, early 20s, full of confidence, but short on precision. His hands moved fast, too fast. Wesley watched as Mateo stepped beside him, calm as ever, correcting the ratios without condescension. And the kid listened. That's what mattered. Wesley slipped into the office again, checking the new staffing plan Christina had left. The layout was cleaner. No open doubles, fewer dangling shifts. With Whitney stepping into leadership and Mateo getting light duty, there was just enough breathing room for a system to function without suffocating the people inside it. He'd scheduled one-on-ones with his core team. No HR jargon, no forms, just chairs, coffee, and truth. Whitney came first. She sat with her back straight, hands folded, not nervous but focused. "What's the hardest part of your job?" he asked, leaning forward. She didn't even blink. "Feeling like I'm the only one who notices when something breaks, when it feels like caring too much is a disadvantage." Wesley nodded. "You're not the only one anymore. I believe that now. Yesterday changed things. You helped change them." "It still isn't easy," she admitted, "but it feels different, like maybe the weight isn't just mine." "You still want management?" "I do," she said, "but not if it means becoming someone who stops listening." "It doesn't," Wesley said, "but it does mean drawing lines, even when no one's watching. You ready for that?" "I think I already am," she said, voice calm and clear. "Next week, you start shadowing Christina. Scheduling, payroll, vendor calls. You'll see what this job really means before you wear the title." She nodded. "I'll be ready. And if something feels wrong, staff, customers, regional leadership, I want to hear it directly. You've got my number." Her brows lifted. "You're giving me your number?" "I don't hand it out often, but I don't want to lose you." She blinked, caught between gratitude and surprise, then smiled softly and left to prep the lunch shift. Mateo came next, moving with less of a limp, still cautious. He looked wary, unsure why he was here. "I owe you something," Wesley said. "For what?" Mateo asked. "For not protecting your health. You shouldn't have felt like working through pain was your only option. I didn't want to lose the hours." "You won't. We're keeping you on full pay this week. You'll do cold prep and light duties until your knee's solid." Mateo's eyes widened. "You don't have to do that." "I do, because if I let you burn out, I'm just lighting a fire I'll have to put out later." Mateo nodded slowly. something softening behind his usually guarded face. "Thanks. That means more than you probably think." "Also," Wesley added, "once you're back to full speed, I want you paired with the training lead. You've got instincts, you adapt. That's rare. I want to see if leadership is something you'd consider." Mateo blinked. "Me? Yeah, you've got what people can't fake. Let's see where it goes." Christina arrived last, carrying a binder and a stack of updated logs. Wesley raised a hand. "Leave the papers, just talk to me." She hesitated, then set everything down and sat. "You've been here longer than most," Wesley began. "You've held this place through some tough seasons. I've done what I could with what I had." "I believe that," he said. "But it's time to move from surviving to leading." She looked down. "I got complacent. I stopped pushing when it got hard. It changes now. I'll check in every 2 weeks, not to micromanage, to partner. I can work with that. You've got 1/4 to stabilize staffing, reduce turnover, and build a bench. Whitney and Mateo are your seeds. Grow them." She nodded, more focused than she'd looked in days. "If you do that, we'll talk about expanding your role, regionals restructuring. If you build leaders, there's a spot for someone like you." For the first time, her face relaxed, not in surrender, but in purpose. "I won't waste it." "Good," he said, standing. "Now let's get back to work." The afternoon moved with rhythm. Whitney checked in with servers, handled register backups, and quietly corrected the new temp expo's mistakes with the grace of someone who knew how it felt to learn under pressure. Mateo stayed on cold prep, rotating stock with slower but more deliberate care. Late in the day, a woman in her 40s walked in. Worn shoes, school security badge, tired eyes. She paused at the counter, scanning the menu, unsure. Whitney walked over. "Can I help you?" "I've only got $6, the woman said quietly. "Just need something I can take home, maybe some sides." Wesley overheard. He watched as Whitney glanced at the cashier. No panic, no pity. "We've got a community plate," she said, pointing to the hot bar. "Pick your 3 favorites. I'll pack it to go." The woman blinked. "Really?" Whitney smiled. "Really?" Wesley didn't step in, didn't announce it. This wasn't about grand gestures anymore. This was just how they did things now. By closing, the store moved like a quiet machine. Dishes stacked, floors cleaned, no one glued to phones, no yelling, no dragging feet. Wesley grabbed his coat from the office, stepped onto the floor one last time. Lights dimmed gently. Whitney wiped down the front counter. Christina finalized the register logs. Mateo had already clocked out, his shorter shifts enforced, respected. Wesley approached the host stand. "You all did good work today." Whitney looked up. "It felt different." "That's because you made it different," he said. He turned to Christina. "Keep the momentum. Don't wait for the next fire to lead." "I won't," she said, eyes steady. "I'll be back in 2 weeks," he added, "but I'll be watching in between." As he reached the door, Whitney called out, "Hey, Mr. Morgan." He turned. "Thanks for not just showing up to punish people. Thanks for staying long enough to fix it." Wesley nodded, a rare softness in his expression. "Fixing it was the easy part," he said. "Keeping it right, that's on all of us." He stepped into the evening air. Above the door, the once flickering neon sign now glowed steady, quietly repaired that morning. A small thing, but it mattered. He paused at his car, looked back through the glass one last time. No more blind spots, no more secondhand reports. If the company was going to grow, it would grow with eyes open, hands dirty, and hearts fully engaged. He started the engine. No fanfare, no final bow. Just the hum of something real, steady, and built to last. Inside, the team finished their close. No shouting, no shortcuts. Just quiet, steady work, the kind that builds something worth keeping.